No more delays. But dear, I'm not done. Tomorrow. No, 10 more days. 5. Oh well, 7 then, if you insist. He says, 7? That's less than 5, right? He goes, yep, certainly, sure is. And then the monster
So
grumbles.
good.
He's not happy with the deal. But, relationships are compromise. All right?
God, that's crazy. It didn't register what you said. I was like ready to move on. I just be like, yeah, man, that was good. Hello, and welcome to Notes from the Oracle. I'm Connor, and together with Jack, my co-host from Cabin 6, we're going into uncharted waters as we explore the monstrous mythology of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Book 2, The Sea of Monsters. Chapter 8, we board the Princess Andromeda, which is a very straightforward chapter title. It's effective, tells you what happens. Not fun.
I'm shaking my head right now. This is a placeholder title. We've got Rick has the outline. He's like, okay, so they're gonna do this, and they're gonna do that. Then they board the Princess Andromeda, and then this, that. And then he's brushing up the book, and he's like, I, for the life of me, cannot think of a good chapter title. Nobody will care. Whatever. Yeah, that's the title. There it is. Lazy. I expect better.
We care. I care.
I
Me.
care.
Me
I
specifically.
20 some years later, and this is me putting my foot down. Rick, do better.
Oh, man. I mean, that's the thing, though. There had to be something in there with like a cruise ship. We board a zombie cruise ship. Would have been better. Maybe they're not actual zombies, but like, I don't know. Either way, we've got the premise. And truly, that's most of what happens in this chapter. Jack and I were
Yeah.
talking a little bit beforehand, and there's not a lot of meat in here. Mostly what they do is board the Princess Andromeda.
Yeah. There are things that happen near the end where it's definitely like it's sowing a little bit,
Mhm.
sowing some seeds. It's putting some new kind of twists and mysteries and stuff like that. But in terms of actual meat, there's not a whole lot on this bone. So to not belabor that point, let's just go. We'll give
Yeah.
our recap and provide what little colored commentary we can as we
Hooray!
basically just describe these guys clambering onto a big yacht. So we start. Percy is at the cliff face again. He's looking at the waves. Annabeth and Tyson run over to him. And Annabeth's like, what's going on? I heard you calling for help. Percy did not call for help. Tyson said, "Yeah, I heard you call for help too." He says, "I didn't call you guys. I'm big chillin' right now." And Annabeth is a little confused, like, "But we definitely heard you. So then who?" She looks around and she sees the duffel bags, the thermos, the bottle of vitamins, and she's very confused. And Percy does something incredible.
I was about to say,
Okay?
Jack, I knew you were gonna love this.
He does something truly astonishing. He says, "Just listen." 'Cause, the harpies are coming, like, the ship is leaving. They don't have a lot of time. And some people might say that there's no time to explain. Some people might be inclined to say that, but not Percy Jackson. He says, "We don't have much time," which is true, and then get this. "I told them about my conversation with Hermes. By the time I was finished, I could hear screeching in the distance, patrol harpies picking up our scent." So he recognized there wasn't a lot of time, but there was time to explain. He did it. He laid everything out. They're all on the same page. Look it. Rick did that in 3 lines. In 3 lines. That's all it takes.
Way to be the change you wanna see in the world, Percy. I
I'm saying,
mean, truly, this guy has had enough people tell him, "No time to explain, we gotta go now," that he's like, "Alright, I'm gonna prove you fuckers wrong. It is book
huh?
2, but I'm gonna show you guys how the fuck it is done."
Yes. Yeah. Huge props, major points to Percy for doing that. So I just wanted to point that out because it did stick out to me like a shining beacon of the book moving in the proper direction. Now,
Dude, me
do
too.
I think this is going to be the new norm? Absolutely fucking not. This is a total fluke. And I know this is a total fluke, but at this point in time, I gotta savor that. It's the little wins.
I while I understand that you and I will continue to be frustrated by this, I also firmly believe that it is actually not a fluke, and it has everything truly to do with the fact that it is Percy who is the one doing the explaining. Because I genuinely have to believe that he's been on the receiving end of this stupid argument of we don't have enough time so many times that I think he really is like, I'm gonna prove it's doable, okay? We are all gonna get eaten in seconds, but I still have enough time to explain that I met with a literal god.
And see, this is how we balance each other out. I am an inherent pessimist, and you are the inherent optimist, Connor. It's the yin and yang that we've got going on. It's a beautiful thing, and that's why it works. But
So
enough
for
about what works. We've got to talk about the stakes now.
well, the
So,
stakes are they're gonna get eaten.
they're gonna get fucking eaten. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood, the safest place for demigods. We're gonna fucking eat you if you wander outside too late. Annabeth says, "All right, Percy, you know we've got to do this quest, right?" And Percy says some things that are I don't think he's actually worried about them. I think he just wants to make sure he's properly consenting everybody on what they're about
Mhm.
to do. Just making sure they're all on the same page. He says, "You know, we're gonna get expelled. Trust me, I'm an expert in getting expelled." And Annabeth, instead of doing the Hermione Granger, where she's like, "We could be killed or worse, expelled," she says, "So? So what? If we fail, there's not gonna be any camp, so we can't get expelled if there's nothing here anyways. We gotta do this."
Dude,
And
I
yeah.
loved that line. I loved that line. And the
Mhm.
follow-up of, "Yeah, but you promised Chiron," and her, "I promised I'd keep you from danger. I can only do that by going with you," is so fucking good, and I don't wanna make this entire episode or even especially not this entire book just a comparison between the show and the book, but now that the show does exist, and Jack, I know you have refrained from watching it to keep your perspective uncolored.
Yes.
This is so much better than Annabeth's take in the show, where she's actively trying to dissuade Percy because of Chiron's warning and keep Percy at camp and then go on the
Ooh,
quest herself. It
that's fascinating. I didn't know that happened in the show because and I think we're about to make the same point. I thought that this was such a good subversion of what people would usually do,
yes,
which is, "Well, no, I have to keep you safe. That means we can't go." I'm
but
like, "That's
the
lazy. This is
rules.
smart." Yeah, exactly. I was like, "This is very smart." And that's a very Annabeth thing to do too. She's very smart. She
Yes.
recognizes that the stakes are so much bigger, that Percy will be ironically in more danger here than going out and doing what he is best equipped to do.
Of all the campers at Camp Half-Blood, only he is best equipped to do. Like,
Mhm.
there's just no debating. If the quest is in the Sea of Monsters, maybe you should send the son of the sea god. Which, like, yeah, that's Tantalus actively fucking with the situation, and I'm aware of that. But Annabeth should also be aware of that. So,
Mhm.
the fact that she has this line in the book, it refilled my soul a little bit as I was like, "Yeah, that's the Annabeth I know."
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, I feel like that trend continues a bit where Annabeth is generally leaning into her wisdom as opposed to innate or initial kind of emotional appeals because she says, "Oh, Tyson, he'll just stay behind." And Tyson asserts, he says, "I wanna go." I think first full proper sentence he said, by the way, "I want to go." And Annabeth says, "No, because I mean, come on, that's, like, impossible. That wouldn't work." And Percy is scratching the side of his head, and he's like, "What the fuck is her problem?" Like, I'm
I love that
still
he's
not quite
absolutely, like, figured it out. He's like, "I wonder why she had such a grudge against Cyclops. There was something
Yeah.
she wasn't telling me." Like, he's totally there. He's just like, "She still hasn't told me, but, like, you've got beef. What the fuck is up?"
Yeah, why are you so racist, Annabeth? What's going on, man? What is this? This fair weather racism that we're seeing? But, unfortunately, there is no time to explain that. Now there
Nope.
truly is not.
The ship is pulling
And
away.
Yeah, but Tyson and Annabeth are both they're doing the telltale games, make a decision. They're both looking at him. The ship is leaving, the timer's running out, and Percy's thinking to himself in this kind of bullet time split second, there's a part of me that doesn't want Tyson to come along. And he explains that, the last 3 days he'd been basically glued at the hip, and the entire time he'd been getting teased and bullied by these other campers and embarrassed like a million times each day, and constantly reminded that he was related to him and that his brother is technically speaking a monster and that his dad is a whore who just shoots out one-eyed freaks. And he's like, I need some space. Now, again, some of that we've talked about. Percy, I'm sure, it's just insecurity and pride and ego, but some of that's
Yeah.
very real. Dude, I literally have not had any space from none.
Yeah.
This camp that was becoming something that was mine is now so immutably tied to you, not only in terms of my reputation, which from Percy, he's like, I didn't even realize I really fucking cared about all that much,
Mhm.
but also my experiences, period. Like, you will not leave me alone because I feel like I can't leave you alone and you don't want to be alone. I really do like that kind of contradictory, kind of the dissonance that Percy has.
Yeah.
And again,
Dissonance is
I
such a
don't.
good word for it, by the way.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I appreciate that. The dissonance. Yeah. It's realistic and it's very understandable. And then he moves into what personally I was thinking of would be the main dangers of bringing Tyson. He says, I just logistically, I don't know how much help Tyson would be in terms
Mhm.
one, keeping us safe, but two, keeping himself safe. Like, he is strong. I'm not stupid. He's fireproof, right? That's huge.
Yes.
But he's also mentally like a 7-year-old and not a very smart one. So, what if we're trying to sneak around and there's a monster or something scary happens and he starts to cry and alert everybody within a half-mile radius that we're there? He will get us all killed. I
It's
Hey, I
very
can't argue with that.
interesting. Yeah, to see Percy wrestle with this logic. And before we get to his ultimate decision, which we all know, he's gonna bring Tyson along, I have been constantly searching this book for why I myself found that I didn't like Tyson. And Jack, I understand that you were the younger sibling in your household, but as someone who grew up as the responsible older sibling, the idea that, like, no, you have to bring your little brother along is something that I think I may have had such a visceral reaction to that I was like, Tyson is the worst. Classic little brother behavior. What do you mean I have to take him on my fun quest with my friends? What do you
Mhm,
mean? He's
mhm,
gonna get us all killed. He's gonna do something stupid. And
mhm,
suddenly I was like, dude, I may have been projecting my own, like, just, you're a kid. A kid having a sibling is complicated. It's never
mhm,
easy. And I think I was like, I relate to Percy in this situation as he feels like that older brother role. And especially with Tyson's relative immaturity to our other two characters, suddenly that idea that it's like, dude, I just want to do something on my own and not have to deal with you while I'm trying to get something done
mhm.
was very relatable.
How
That's it.
introspective of you.
Like, I was, again, I've really been trying to think about, like, why did I fucking hate this guy?
Yeah.
Then Percy turns right around, and honestly, I think to tie it back to my own experience here, the exact type of choice I would have made is he's like, "Well, we can't leave him," he says. "Tantalus will punish him for us being gone." At
Yep.
the end of the day, as the older sibling in this sort of relationship between the two of them, Percy feels an innate level of responsibility for Tyson's well-being, for his safety. And therefore, he's like, well, at the very least, if you come with us, I am watching you, and I can make sure that I'm doing my best to keep you safe. And just like that, he has assumed the responsibility of an extra person on the quest. or
Mhm.
wherever, said older sibling is going. And I think that assumed responsibility is something that I probably latched onto. It was like, man, that's unfair. That's bullshit. Fuck him. Fuck Dyson.
Maybe. All I'm hearing is that I still don't have a good excuse for why I was so cruel as a child.
Hey, man, I'm sure you can find one. You just got to dig deep enough.
I
Me,
just
I
really
just,
uh-huh.
every page that Tyson is on, I'm like, why was I an asshole to you? Please give me a reason.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
need
well,
to
you
defend
you
myself.
found it.
I
You
did.
found it. I haven't. And I am hoping and praying that he does something just inexcusably bad so I could be like, "Ah, there it is. That's the reason." But right now, I think it's just because I was a cruel, stupid child that wanted to see Percy do cool stuff. It's like,
I
"Man, he's
can't
got this big fucking crybaby with him. That's lame."
I can't put it in good faith that I didn't probably also just think that as well. But now I have plausible deniability. Let's fucking go,
You do,
baby.
and that's the best kind of deniability.
Speaking of plausible deniability, Annabeth is trying to spell Cyclops to give herself some plausible deniability when she's like, Percy, we're going to Polyphemus's island. Polyphemus is a. And then she tries to spell Cyclops and can't do it because she's dyslexic. You know what I mean, she says. And Percy, hey, Tyson can go if he wants to. And Tyson claps his hands. Want to, want to. So
Yeah.
now they're all going. Annabeth gives Percy the evil eye, and now they have a different problem. And you know what? I give her props. Percy says, I guess she could tell I wasn't going to change my mind. Or maybe she just knew that we didn't have time to argue. And just like that, she gets straight to business. All right, how do we get to the ship? And Percy says, Hermes said my dad would help. Well then, seaweed brain, what are you waiting for? Fair point.
Yeah.
Although, knowing that the gods are like not totally omniscient, but they absolutely are paying attention when they want to be, the fact that Percy has to ask it all is kind of crazy. Like, do you think Poseidon was like, I can't, you guys, hippocampi, you cannot breach the surface of the water until he prays? He's got to learn to ask nicely for things.
I mean, Poseidon was an absentee parent, so he's
True.
starting from square one, and square one is use your words. Maybe that's it?
Maybe.
Maybe he's trying to actually teach something? Could be. Or maybe it's,
Oh.
it's not like the movies where Poseidon is just in his brain. He's just in Percy's brain. It quite literally is like you need to invoke, you need to put it out into the universe, you need to use your words. I
I
don't
like
know.
that. I buy that explanation. You have to, hey man, names have power.
Right, yeah. It's more like words. Words are
Yeah.
important.
Honestly,
But
we've
that
done good
said
without the names have power throughout most of this book. But perhaps, like, as you were saying, the idea that you have to invoke the presence of Poseidon, I like that. Actually, that feels like a
yeah.
good explanation.
Now, I will undercut that by saying I think every single time that they have prayed and, like, given sacrifice to the gods, it is entirely internal, with the exception of saying, "Here you go." Right? Am I remembering that correctly when Percy was first like, "Come on, whoever my parent is, please just help me out." He, like, did it all in his head.
Yep,
Maybe that was the problem.
specifically.
I don't know. Maybe if he said it out loud, he's like, "Hey, whoever my parent is, help me out." Maybe he would've gotten claimed sooner. I don't know.
Maybe. Or maybe Poseidon was aura farming just like Annabeth constantly is. Maybe that's a Greek trait.
Shit. That I was
He's
gonna
like,
say, that might just be a Greek thing, is the
I
aura
am gonna
farming.
claim you at the best possible time during Capture the Flag to make you look like a true badass.
Yeah,
People are
and
gonna
it's
be
gonna be dope.
kneeling. It's gonna be so sick. Chiron's gonna
Uh-huh,
announce you. Like, I got you, kiddo. It's like,
uh-huh.
you know
He's
what?
like, "If I did that right now, Percy, alright, if I did that right now at dinner, people are already sitting down. I need people to genuflect. You don't even know what that word is, buddy, but it's gonna happen, and it's gonna change your fucking life, okay?"
Oh man, a full novel from now at the beginning, you're gonna be so upset about your reputation. You'll get it then. Then you'll realize what I did for you.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, door farming is pretty cool. Percy does ask his dad for help, much like the few times that I was told to say grace at the dinner table. Very clunky, kind of like awkwardly trying to make small talk. He goes, "Dad, how's it going?" And Annabeth says, "Percy, fucking stop with the preamble. We gotta pick it up." He says, "Listen, we need your help. We gotta get to the ship, like, before we get eaten and stuff." So, and then he trails off. He does not complete the statement. And at first, nothing happens. Waves continue to crash against the shore. Harpies are scrabbling up the hill and over the sand dunes. And then there's the aura. The aura has been farmed. We now get to
Mhm.
see the bounty of it. And this is cool. About 100 yards out to sea, three white lines appeared on the surface. They move fast toward the shore like claws ripping through the ocean. That's a really cool image. The claws tearing through the surface of the water. That's really neat.
Is pretty sick. And unfortunately, we're not gonna talk about hippocampi today because there's a later chapter where that's the only myth that I'm gonna have access to, but incredibly mythologically accurate. So props to you, Rick. I see you.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, yes, the little claws that were tearing through the water actually were the fish ponies, per Tyson's description. And Percy says he was right. They are indeed
Can't
fish
argue
ponies.
with that description.
The creatures pull themselves onto the sand, and we see that they are horses in the front, but their back halves are silvery fish bodies with glistening scales and rainbow tail fins. And Annabeth uses the proper term, hippocampi. And then she makes the statement, they're beautiful. And for some reason, and maybe it's because they come up more in the future, I do remember the hippocampi.
Mhm.
I was, like, reading this, and I was like, "Oh, I remember these guys." Like, that is how spotty my memory is. The hippocampi have etched out just a little spot that didn't get blotted away.
I think they stick out because they feel really in line. And again, I did some research on these before realizing that I was gonna save them for a later chapter, spoilers, but they actually are a very integral part of Poseidon's court and his depictions in art and stuff. So it's really cool to see them appear and be like a regular staple of Poseidon's image in this book and in future ones. And I think it just fits really well. And honestly, I also thought it was a really cool detail that Annabeth is so impressed and goes out of her way to say they're beautiful because it yet again shows that Percy and Annabeth are not confined to the sins of their parents. Just because Poseidon and Athena don't get along doesn't mean that Annabeth can't appreciate one of the things that Poseidon has created that is objectively just a beautiful, helpful creature in her eyes.
Mhm. But we see that these creatures also incredibly personable.
That's
One of
true.
them whinnies in appreciation at Annabeth's compliment and starts nuzzling her. The harpies then do show up. They're like, "There they are, bad children." And he said, "We're gonna fucking eat you." We learned, I
Hold
think for
on.
the first time. Yeah.
Brief pause. They
Uh-huh.
specifically say, snack time for lucky harpies. And I just know these harpies have been wanting to eat a camper for years. It's been in their contract in the footnotes. If X
Uh-huh.
happens, you are allowed to eat a camper. And they have been fucking staring that line down like one day we're gonna get him.
So the
That's it.
implication, it hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah.
they're getting close.
Why else would they be so just abundantly excited of like, "Yes! Snack time for lucky harpies." Lucky implies it doesn't happen frequently, if ever.
That's true. It also implies that they have been actively looking forward to it. That's a good point. I really didn't give it much thought outside of, yeah, the Camp Half-Blood sucks.
Hey, man,
Not a
I
good
just
place to
really
be.
like these harpies that wanna eat kids. They're funny as hell.
They are funny. They're described very silly as well. There are 5 of them. They're fluttering over the top of the dunes. They're bumbling, kind of like bees. Plump little hags with pinched faces and talons and feathery wings way too small for their bodies. And Percy says, "They reminded me of miniature cafeteria ladies who'd been crossbred with dodo birds. They weren't very fast, thank the gods, but they were vicious if they caught you." That's silly. Just these fat
Rick.
little demon ladies.
Never change, Rick, never change.
Uh-huh. And
But
Percy, he's in action mode. He's like, "All
yep.
right, the little harpy ladies are here. They want to pick the fucking meat from our bones and drink the marrow. We gotta go. Grab a duffel bag." And he looks at Tyson. He's like, "Tyson, come on, grab a bag." And Tyson is currently having a spiritual experience with one of these hippocampi. His mouth is just agape, jaw is slack, a little bit of drool, I imagine, dribbling off his bottom lip. He's just properly disassociating as he's staring down this hippocampi.
I've
Percy's
seen
like,
that kid at the zoo before.
"Oh, 100%. They're soul bonding right now." And Percy snaps his fingers. He's like, "Tyson." Tyson goes, he's barely loose. He's like, "Come on." So with Annabeth's help, they get Tyson going. They put their bags on their steeds, and Poseidon apparently noted that Tyson is quite large, and so provided a very large hippocampi that would be able to fit a Cyclops. Very nice. How
Yeah,
I was gonna say, what is the word I'm looking for?
thoughtful.
Thoughtful. That's the word. I struggle to use that with the gods, but that is what it is. It's thoughtful.
Yeah. I really do see this as Poseidon being like, "Shit, I gotta do better." And I feel like over the course of the novels, he has his ups and downs, but really this is like his growth arc just constantly happening in the background.
Mhm. Yeah, and
But
the hippocampi are continue to be very cool. Percy
mhm.
gets the "Giddy up!" and the hippocampi turn and plunge into the water. Annabeth and Tyson follow behind him. The harpies are cursing, wailing for their snacks to come back, but it's too late. The hippocampi race over the water at the speed of jet skis. The harpies fall far behind. Soon, the shore of Camp Half-Blood was nothing but a dark smudge. And Percy laments and wonders if he'd ever see that place again, but currently he has other problems. That
True.
being the absolutely massive fucking cruise ship looming in front of them and his ride towards Florida and another title card, The Sea of Monsters.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
So many
Oh,
title
man.
cards in
I
this book.
know.
It's probably because it's just an actual place they're going this time.
That is true. But that's okay.
Yeah.
They zip along the waves. They get up to the massive cruise ship, and Percy notes that it is one of those things that, like, you don't realize how huge it is until you get close. And Jack, I don't know if you've ever seen a cruise ship. That was exactly my experience. I thought they would be small, and then I get up and I saw one, and they're genuinely fucking enormous. Like, unfathomably so.
Yeah, I mean, they are, like, basically small cities on the water.
Yeah, it's insane. And I was very surprised when I saw one, and it towers. Like, they
Mhm.
tower over everything around them. And Percy, I mean, he even says, "It felt as though I were looking up at a building in Manhattan. The white
Yeah.
hull was at least 10 stories tall." And I grew up in not a small town in the Midwest, but a sprawling suburb, which means I never saw buildings that were more than, like, 5 stories maximum.
Mhm. I was gonna say, unless you were visiting, like, Ann Arbor or if you were really hitting the city, like, going to Detroit, but
Yep, and you get to see, like,
definitely
1.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, you never felt claustrophobic because of the buildings.
No. This is way off topic, but I still remember the first time I went to New York. We went as a group,
I remember.
and dude,
You were
life-changing
gobsmacked, bro.
experience. I've
You
never
were
seen anything like it.
I know. You literally were walking like you were in a fantasy land.
I was.
Yeah, you
Honestly, I
were
was having the most wonderful time. I was there with my best friends in a wonderland, in a fantasy world that shouldn't exist.
yeah, you were looking up at all the beauty and splendor of what man has created, and I was busy looking down at the fucking garbage and rats and the wealth disparity. But, like you said, at least
Yeah.
we were with friends, right?
Yeah.
We walked away with very different perceptions of New York, and unfortunately, I've had to go back there far more than you have. Isn't that ironic?
It really is, honestly, it feels unfair.
It truly is, yeah. There's
Maybe
something
the
cosmic
universe was
there.
like, "If you spend another day there, you're gonna get it. You're gonna understand the truth. We have given you just the perfect amount of time to withhold
Uh-huh,
the beauty and nothing else."
uh-huh. Yeah, he said, "Look at these shadows on the cave wall. Don't look at what's casting them. Don't look at what's casting them. They're so cool."
Exactly. But Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson are getting closer to the ship, and now they can even see the name of the ship, the Princess Andromeda. And attached to the bow is the masthead, which is, Percy describes, a 3-story tall woman wearing a white Greek chiton sculpted to look as if she were chained to the front of the ship. She was young and beautiful with flowing black hair, but her expression was one of absolute terror. Which is mythologically accurate. She was chained and terrified.
Yeah. So, Connor, are you saying that that is the Princess Andromeda? Because that's
Ooh.
what Percy says. Literally right after.
That is in fact the Princess Andromeda, and we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about Andromeda at the end of this episode. But we're not there yet. We've got
Not
we've
yet. We've
got
still
more
got
chapter to get through, and we've been
yep.
going slow.
And for the sake of not, I guess, doubling over what we're gonna be talking about later, I will skip Percy's little recap of that myth. But basically, there's this girl, she got chained to a rock by her parents because there was a big old monster, and what's really important is Percy got his namesake by the hero that saved her, Perseus.
Yep,
And then
Perseus saves her.
we get a little bit of Percy, not Perseus lore. Well, I guess a little bit of both. We get why his name is Percy.
Mhm.
And
I
Percy's like,
really
it's
liked this.
interesting. I thought it was cool too. He says, Perseus is a son of Zeus, and I am a son of Poseidon, but my mom chose that name because the original OG Perseus is one of the few heroes in Greek myths who had an actual happy ending. A lot of the others died, they were betrayed, mauled, mutilated, poisoned, cursed by the gods. And Sally, being the paragon she is like, I even if, because names have power, but even if
Yep.
they don't, I like the idea of my son being one of the lucky ones. And Percy, being a little bit down on himself, says, based on how my life was going so far, I wasn't real optimistic. I would say bullshit. The fact that you're still alive is tremendously lucky.
Dude, you took the words out of my mouth. I said, given solely the events of book 1, that is a crazy fucking take. Like,
Mhm.
you saved the world. You gained the praise, sure he didn't show it very well, of Zeus, king of the gods himself, who actively wanted to kill you days prior. Moments prior. And he didn't. I would say you've been incredibly lucky and have so far had happy endings.
Yeah, all things considered. But, I guess being in it definitely colors perception. But that's neither
He
here
is
nor there.
in the shit right now, which
He
I
is.
did also acknowledge. He is not exactly looking at the world with the greatest of perspectives in this moment.
Correct. He's in the shit, but they gotta get in the ship, Connor. In the ship,
True.
And Annabeth asks, very good question. How do we get aboard? And the hippocampi are like, we got you. And so they're skimming along the starboard side of the ship. One thing about the hippocampi that I think we might have skipped over, and is a neat little detail, they glide over the water. They move as fast as jet skis, but they aren't getting buffeted by the waves. They're basically just soaring through the waves,
Magic shit.
which is
So
really
cool.
neat. It's
Yeah.
really cool. Percy's like, I barely have to hold on. They just kind of do their thing. I think he even said that they were easier to ride than the Pegasus.
Specifically, which is, I thought, a really cool detail because Pegasi are another child of Poseidon in a certain sense. And so the idea that Percy's like, I have an innate connection to both of these types of creatures, but this one just being in the sea makes me that much more comfortable with it, I thought was super duper cool.
Yeah.
And apparently, this is a trait of children of Poseidon that Tyson has also inherited, because this guy might as well be doing no scopes, as it says his hippocampus was treating him to 360 aerials and backward ollies.
Yeah. He's the Tony Hawk of hippocampi. It's
I
truly
guess, man.
astonishing. They
He's
pull
got
up to
so
this
many
little
points.
he is racking up crazy points. He's got multipliers and shit. It's insane. But yeah, they pull up to this little ladder. Again, the hippocampi seemingly just know exactly what they need to do. Tyson's having the time of his fucking life. And Percy is like, "Dude, Tyson, that's sick. That's really great. I need you to fucking tone it down because you're laughing hysterically and being really fucking loud." And Tyson, once again, just making me feel so bad for myself as a child, is just such a good guy. He's like, "Can't we take Rainbow?" His smile is fading, and Percy stares at him and says, "Rainbow?" And the hippocampus whinnied like he likes his name. He says, Percy goes, we gotta go. Well, Rainbow, he's not able to climb ladders." And Tyson sniffles. He buries his face in the hippocampus mane. He's like hugging him around his neck. He said, "I'm gonna miss you, Rainbow." The hippocampus is neighing. It's like crying. They're soul bonded right
It's
now.
adorable.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I know we've talked about it in some of the prior chapters, how Tyson in this book has more of the fresh perspective and wonder that Percy maybe once had, but does not afford himself now. And I feel like this
Mhm.
is one of those cases. I can't help but think last book, if he had a hippocampi, Percy would be doing all sorts of shit with it.
Yeah, he'd have been like, "This is the best day ever!
This
I
is
love my
literally,
dad!
yeah, this is fucking awesome. Exactly. He would have
This
loved
is a
Poseidon
re-soul
if
of
he
my
got to do that.
drama!"
Yes, exactly. 100%. But this time he's like, "Yeah, this is cool. This is nice. It's efficient and quite literally a call to prayer, but that's all it is right now. We got other shit we gotta do." He's not reveling in what has just happened.
Yeah.
He's mistaking the water for the ocean, I guess, to use a metaphor that feels apt.
Yeah. I think it's worth pointing out that at the end of this day, this is the same day as the Stymphalian birds. So Percy has dealt with the Stymphalian birds. Tantalus had a conversation with a god and is now trying to board this boat. I get why he's a little like, dude, we just gotta fucking keep moving. Please focus.
I know, but, like, this is the first cool thing that's happened, I guess except for chatting with Hermes, that was pretty neat.
Oh, you're
But this is
definitely
this is
right.
objectively sick. This is like a good time. He's
This might be the
literally in his
coolest
element.
thing that Poseidon has ever done for Percy.
Yeah. Much cooler
Like,
than that fuck
genuinely.
ass catfish.
True.
Mhm.
But they find the ladder, they climb up, and they get to a maintenance deck stacked with lifeboats. Annabeth starts prying her way through doors with her dagger, cursing in ancient Greek as she can't get some of them open. They start sneaking through corridors, and then Tyson, he notes something: bad smell. And I like this. Percy has learned from chapter 2 when Tyson was like, "Hey man, something's wrong. Something smells off." Percy's like, "Oh." So this time he says, "Annabeth, Cyclops are like satyrs. They can smell monsters. Isn't that right, Tyson?" Tyson nods nervously. And I do feel like this is Rick a little bit being like, "See, he's useful right away.
Yeah.
Percy was right to bring him along."
Yeah. He's weirdly more accurate than Grover was most of the time last book, too. He's like, "That
True.
smells bad." And Percy's like, "Oh, shit, really?" Tyson goes, "Yeah, not good." And they go, "Oh, alright, we should be on guard." But, a little thing that I think you might have glossed over, at the very least, I want to bring more attention to,
Mhm.
they are finding nothing and nobody. And not
Yes.
Odysseus nobody, like, there is not a single person here, it's dead. It's a ghost ship. Like, there is no activity, no sign of life.
Which
So the fact
is
that
very odd.
it's
Very odd
weird.
for a cruise ship.
It is a functional cruise ship that is en route, and there's nobody on it, but Tyson smells something. So again, things are weird, not good. I would go so far as to say bad. All of those actually add up to
Yes.
being bad, a bad thing. But Tyson, he's nodding nervously, saying, "Yeah, I can smell bad things." And this is interesting. Percy mentioned that the mist is now distorting Tyson's face again, making it hard to concentrate, and it almost looks like he has 2 eyes instead of 1, because now they're out of Camp Half-Blood. And again, I don't know if that's because Percy is out of practice in dealing with seeing through the mist. He has atrophied his godly perception, or if it's because the mist just happens to be stronger around Tyson. We have not gotten an answer to that. We will not get an answer to that this chapter if we even do end up getting an answer. I just found that interesting that Rick has made specific note of that.
That's actually a really good point, and I wanted to say something about it, but I didn't know what to say, but I think you make actually a really good point because we're never going to get an explanation for, like, this. We're not gonna find out that, like, hey, Percy being less trained is not the right word, less prepared right now is what's causing him to have more issues with the mist. That's not something we'll see outside of, like, demigods being exposed to the mist for the very first time or realizing that it's there for the very first time. So it makes me wonder if maybe Poseidon really did put some extra level of enchantment or protections on Tyson somehow that do cause him to have that extra layer of mist, because we will later learn, spoiler, that Tyson was intentionally brought to Percy by Poseidon. And so it wouldn't be unreasonable to believe that with that being the case, that he was like, and people need to not know that you're a Cyclops throughout all of this. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's it. You made a good point, and I thought that was interesting. And I think that's a good explanation that maybe it is Tyson who is the source of, like, the extra mist on himself, because they're gonna see
Mm.
other monsters in this chapter
Yes,
that,
yeah.
like, aren't affected by the mist. They're just gonna be like, "Ah, it's very normal."
Mhm. Yeah.
But
Just again, something interesting. I'm glad you also found that interesting. But
I like the direction you took that. That was good.
that's what I'm here for, man. Annabeth asks a clarifying question. Okay, Tyson, what exactly do you smell? Tyson gives you know what? I'm going to say this is a fair and good response.
Yeah.
Something bad. Something bad. Annabeth goes, great. Yeah, that clears it up. When the fuck did Grover ever say explicitly, "Oh, wait, it's this monster that I'm smelling"? He just said there are monsters nearby, and sometimes he would ignore it. He'd ignore it or it wouldn't work. So, what the fuck do you mean get specific with it, Annabeth? You racist piece of garbage. Be better. He gave you everything you needed
Honestly,
to know.
I thought the same thing, man. I was like, "Does it matter what monster is around? You should be on guard. You should just be grateful you know there's a monster."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
Percy is sensing something himself too. As they weave their way through the levels of the ship, Percy says he sensed something familiar, something dangerous. And I like this. Jack, do you have any ideas or know what he's sensing? Because I do.
So, couple thoughts. At this point in the chapter, I had no fucking clue. My first thought was maybe Luke. He was sensing Luke. My next thought was maybe he was sensing so like it's this cruise and it's like a party place. Like maybe this is like Lotus Casino kind of energy, something
Okay.
that messes with the senses. But later in the chapter, I think at literally near the very end, they mentioned something else. So we'll put a pin in that just for sake of keeping everything
Okay.
kind
I'm
of
with that.
in order. But remind me, we're gonna get
I
to a
will.
point, and it's specifically when Luke says to go grab something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But now we'll come back to that pin later. Now they are thinking about a hiding place because they need sleep. They're
Yeah.
tired, they've had a long day, and they managed to just find an open door. How nice. Percy's like, that
Yeah.
struck me as weird. That's
Uh-huh.
odd. Which,
Yeah. It gets even weirder because there's a basket of chocolate goodies on the table, specifically an iced down bottle of sparkling cider on the nightstand, and a mint on the pillow with a handwritten note that said, "Enjoy your cruise." Now, again, all of that implies that this is a working cruise ship that are expecting people, but the iced down bottle indicates that this is recent.
it's
This was
fresh.
recently set up. This is fresh.
Mhm. Yeah, man, It's almost like they should perhaps be concerned, but they're very, very eepy, and they need
They
some
are
sleep.
they are exceedingly eepy, and this place is set up literally just for them. So they
So
open up their duffel bags, they look and see Hermes really, really good at packing. Who would have thought? God of
I know,
travelers and
right?
messengers, really fucking good at packing. Got extra clothes, toiletries, camp rations, a Ziploc bag full of regular mortal cash, if only they had an infinite cash card. A leather pouch also filled with golden drachmas. That's huge.
Yeah, we've
And he
seen how nice
even
those can be.
yeah, holy crap. I mean, probably the most useful thing in there.
Yeah,
Um, and he even packs some individualized essentials. He gives Tyson's oilcloth and tools and metal bits and packed Annabeth's cap of invisibility. So they're kitted out now. They are kitted out.
fully set.
They've got their stuff. They if this was Dark Souls, they reach the bonfire. They could do their level up. We're good. All right, we're feeling at least a little bit more prepared for what's to come. Now, I I don't I don't think this doesn't matter. It ends up not mattering, but I do find it a little weird. Annabeth says, "All right, I'll be next door." Why are you guys splitting up for sleeping in this scary, scary cruise ship?
Jack, because girls and boys cannot sleep in the same room. God, have some
See,
decency. Moving on.
I- now that's true, and I would never, ever, ever want to imply that that's even remotely okay to do. All right, but I feel like it would have been again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's no point in me even bringing this up because it doesn't fucking matter. Outside of I feel like it would help build on the characterization a little bit more of Annabeth struggling with Cyclops. If Percy's like, "All right, I'll sleep on the floor. Tyson gets the couch. Annabeth will give you the bed or whatever." And Annabeth just, is like, no, I'm gonna go sleep somewhere else." And maybe Percy could notice, she's warily eyeing down Tyson.
Tyson during it, yeah. I
Right.
thought the
Like,
same thing, to be
mhm,
honest with you, and I wonder if it just maybe didn't work for the chapter, but I also caught that it's really weird that she's like, "Alright, gang, let's split up," and it's like, "You were just told that this ship has monsters on it, and you believed it." Like,
right. You're about to be as vulnerable as possible. Asleep. You're gonna be unconscious. Yeah, better go by myself.
yeah. Okay, man. Cool, sure. I
And it's illogical no matter what. It's especially weird because there is no preamble as to why she's doing that. It's
it's
just
just like,
very
"Oh, look, 2
bizarre.
rooms. How convenient. Alright, later, guys."
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's one of the, like I don't think it's described like this, but maybe it's one of those suite rooms where it's like a shared common space. There's like a bathroom in between, and then
That
there's
was
like
the
one room
impression
and
I
another
got.
room.
Yeah.
See, I was reading it initially as they are in 2 separate rooms. Like, they have to go into the hallway to get to each other. Again, this doesn't fucking matter. There's
No,
not a
no,
whole
no.
lot of
I
substance that
think
we've
you're
been
right.
talking about.
'Cause she says, "I'll
So
be next door," and then we locked our doors plural. So she's totally in a different room. It's fine. It
yeah.
doesn't make any sense, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's again, it's weird. We love our tangents. Anyways, Tyson
Hey,
crashes on the couch.
yep. Tyson crashes on the couch, and Percy will slowly drift off to sleep, and we are gonna get a tangent for the chapter. And this, I think, is probably where the chapter, for me, really picked up and got interesting. Because up to this
Mhm.
point, it's got, like, some fun moments, and it's not a bad chapter, but it feels very empty compared to some of
Yeah.
the other chapters we've had so far. It hasn't actively pissed me off at any point, it's not boring, but there's just
Mhm.
not a lot going on. But now Percy, he says he has his worst dream yet,
Well,
which
hold on.
is notable.
We gotta set the set dressing is creepier first.
That's true. Fair
Percy
enough.
lays on the bed and stares out the porthole, and then he starts, getting a little schizophrenic. He starts hearing whispers in the hallway, but there was nobody there. He's not seeing people, shadows walk by or anything like that, and they checked out half the ship, and there was no living person that they could find, but the voices are keeping him awake. He says, "They reminded me of my trip to the underworld, the way the spirits of the dead sounded as they drifted past." So maybe it is a ghost ship. Maybe he was right.
Yeah. It is, I think, a really good point that you bring that up because knowing that the dream he's going to be standing at the edge of an enormous pit, which he is immediately going to recognize as Tartarus.
Mhm.
The idea that he is remembering what it's like to have spirits around, I wonder if that makes him more vulnerable to Kronos's meddling with his mind in this moment. Like, if that fear and that memory of the underworld magically brings him closer to the underworld in this moment somehow.
Mm, maybe. That's an interesting thought. But he eventually does drift to sleep. His weariness gets to him, and he says that he has his worst dream yet. Wrong. Incorrect, actually. This is not even remotely close to the worst dream. The worst dream is still where his fucking meat was slawing off of his bones and he had a crown of acid thorns on his head as the dead
Correct.
were tearing at him. And they said, the champion, the crowned hero.
I was
That's the
thinking of that
worst.
specifically. The one where his body was literally melting around him and he was being consumed by the sands near Tartarus. But
Yeah.
hey, man, this is the worst one.
Yep. Yeah, strap in. It's actually quite a boring dream, but strap in. He's at Tartarus again. Whoops. And there's that cold laughter echoing in the darkness below. If it isn't the young hero. Percy, I always love how Kronos' voice is described. He says the voice
Mhm.
was like a knife blade scraping across stone. On his way to another great victory. So Kronos is back. All right, shit. Here we are. There was no build up. It's just he's here. They're talking now. Yeah.
I
And
did feel
mhm,
like there should have been a little bit more preamble to it, and just to draw comparisons to some of Percy's dreams in book 1, the moment where Kronos is like, "Hold on, we're being watched," when he's talking to Luke,
mhm.
and then never actually properly addresses Percy until he needs to, so much cooler. Having him just be like, "Hello, I'm here to fuck with you," is a
Remember
little bit
me?
underwhelming.
Yep. Well, well, well. Welcome back to my pit. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a little bizarre. There's not as much I feel like there's just not as much weight to it.
Yeah.
But it's also weird because this isn't the most important part of the dream. Like, Kronos is the preamble
Mhm.
for the important bits. And Percy says, "I wanna shout at Kronos. I wanna tell him to leave me alone. I wanna draw Riptide, strike him down, but I can't move. And even if I could," and I like this little line, "how could I kill something that had already been destroyed, chopped to pieces, cast into eternal darkness?" Hey, man, good question.
That was good.
How?
I did
Yeah,
enjoy that.
yeah, that's tough. He is, by all intents and purposes, for an immortal, he's as beaten as he can get. There's nothing more you can do to the guy.
Yeah, but he continues to taunt Percy. "Don't let me stop you. Perhaps this time when you fail, you'll wonder if it's worthwhile slaving for the gods. How exactly has your father shown his appreciation lately?" And then his laughter fills the cavern and the scene begins to change. But it's like,
Mhm.
wow, you picked the wrong day to taunt him with
I
that.
know! The same thing. I was like, "This would have been great, like, 24 hours ago."
Literally
He just
yesterday.
unfortunately, Percy just had a magical moment with the ponies that his father just lent out to him,
I mean,
and they
even an
were
hour ago, man. Like, shit.
yeah! It's definitely, yeah, kind of a weird thing to add, which I guess also kind of detracts from it because it makes it seem like Kronos doesn't know that Poseidon did that, which I feel like takes away the idea that Kronos is always maybe watching. Or maybe that's the point. Maybe it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, there's a weakness here. Kronos isn't all-knowing, he isn't omniscient, he isn't omnipotent, he doesn't know."
Mhm. I think you make a good point, especially because we were just reminded that no, he's currently chopped into tiny pieces in eternal darkness. So, like, how dangerous is he really? False sense of security.
Mhm.
But now the dream shifts, and we get into the best part of the chapter. It's Grover, baby!
There he is. We get Femboy Grover. He's in his bedroom prison in the Cyclops' lair. And this made me feel so bad for Grover. He really is just going through it. He's
Yes.
sitting at a loom in his soiled wedding dress, madly unraveling the threads of an unfinished bridal train. Honey pie! A monster shouts from behind the boulder. Grover yelps and begins weaving the threads back together. And now we get a proper look at the Cyclops, the one who is
Mhm.
holding
Grover
Grover
captive.
captive.
Mhm.
And so the room shook as the boulder was pushed aside. Looming in the doorway was a Cyclops so huge he made Tyson look vertically challenged. He had jagged yellow teeth and gnarled hands as big as my whole body. And it gets a little goofy. He wore a faded purple t shirt that said World Sheep Expo 2001. He must have been at least 15 feet tall, but the most startling thing was his enormous, milky eye, scarred and webbed with cataracts. If he wasn't completely blind, he had to be pretty darn close.
As good. As good.
Yeah.
We're finally making Polyphemus seem like a real threat. And I like that because we need a big monster to fight at the end of this book.
Yeah, with the exception of the stupid fucking t-shirt. But,
Well,
it's
yeah.
Percy Jackson, that's silly. But
I was
yeah,
gonna
no,
say, gotta have that.
he's a terrifying beast. They're cooked. I gotta be honest, bro, they're screwed.
How are we gonna
Thing
do
is
this?
huge.
We're
No,
not.
seriously, they won't. And Polyphemus, "What are you doing?" Grover in his falsetto voice, "Nothing, just weaving my bridal train, as you can see." The Cyclops sticks all he needs to do is stick one hand into the room. He starts groping around until he found the loom, and he paws at the cloth. "It hasn't gotten any longer." He goes, yes it has, dearest. See? I've added at least an inch." Polyphemus is getting mad. He says, "Too many delays." He sniffs the air. Now he's getting horny again. "You smell good, like goats." And Grover is terrified and goes, "Oh, haha, do you like it? It's eau de chèvre." Now that's French, Connor, and I never took French, but you did. What is that?
It's not what you said, that's for damn sure.
It's not eau de chèvre.
It's eau de chèvre.
All right. All right. Fuck you, man.
I'm right.
Your fake ass language. Get out of here.
Oh my god. I will say, especially because for those at home, I just edited chapter 1 and 2 not long ago where we talk about Cyclops the satyr play. All of this between Grover and Polyphemus gives such Cyclops energy. It is phenomenal. Grover here is like the, "Oh, do you like it?" Just reminds me of a much more meek version of Silenus in a
Yeah.
way that was so funny. I truly enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, I mean, this entire next back and forth is great. The Cyclops, he goes, he's baring his pointed teeth. "Good enough to eat."
"Oh,
"Oh, you're
you're
such a
such a
flirt."
flirt."
"No more delays." "But dear, I'm not done." "Tomorrow." "No, no, 10 more days." "5." "Oh, well, 7 then, if you insist." He says, "7? That's less than 5, right?" He goes, yep, certainly, sure is." And then the monster
So
grumbles.
good.
He's not happy with the deal. But, relationships are compromise. All right?
Oh, God. That's crazy. It didn't register what you said. I was, like, ready to move on and just be like, "Yeah, man, that was hilarious." Yeah, man, this is the compromise that relationships are built on. While
That's right.
Grover is a prisoner, like, "Please, one more
Mhm.
day. I'm gonna
Yeah.
die."
Yep. That's
Oh,
exactly
man.
right.
And then he's aware that Percy is here. He says, "Hurry, Percy! Please, please, please!"
So did you take that as he was aware Percy was there? I took that as more of just Grover saying a prayer and Percy happened to be watching.
I Now that you mention it, you are correct. But because it's the empathetic link, I want to believe that Grover's like, I know you're there. Maybe I don't know exactly that you're here right now, but like, please, I need your help.
Mhm.
Either way, that is the end of the dream. It ends
That's
as
the dream.
Grover pleads for his life.
Yeah, that's and okay. Maybe that's the worst dream Percy's ever had because it's his friend being tortured and not him. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I still feel like, and I mean no offense to you, Connor. If I had a dream of all of my skin and muscle sawing off and the dead dragging me down into the pits of hell as acid burned into my skull from a crown of thorns and a lost god of time cackled over me and mocked me, and then I had another dream where it was just you. It was just you kinda stinky in a cave trying not to marry a disgusting guy, I'll be honest, like, that would suck. I would still think me having all of my mortal flesh getting torn off is worse.
Yeah. If
M
I had that first dream, I would never sleep again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That second one, I'd be like, "Oh, I guess I gotta go save Jack."
I'd be like,
And
"Damn,
then
that sucks."
yeah, and then I would do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Genuinely, that first dream, I'd be like, "Ah, shit. Well, I'm never closing my eyes again." Like,
Yeah, yeah. Glad we're on the same page with that.
yep, definitely. Anyhow, worst dream ever.
Worst dream ever over. Percy wakes up to the ship's whistle and a voice on the intercom. And Connor, I saw something that made my heart sink. It's
Oh,
because some guy with an Australian accent is talking on the intercom. And Connor, I can't do an Australian accent.
good morning,
Can you?
passengers. We'll be at sea all day today. Excellent weather for the poolside mumbo party. Don't forget $1 million bingo in the Kraken Lounge at 1 o'clock. And for our special guests, disemboweling practice on a promenade.
That was. You were so confident, man.
I was ready. I
And
was so ready.
that's half the battle. Does that mean you did a good job? Absolutely not. But I applaud your confidence.
I was confident, and that is all I had going for me. But Percy sits up in bed and he's like, did he say disemboweling practice?
Do you think Percy does the accent?
Absolutely not, because he just goes, what did he say?
Yeah,
But I
what?
wish Percy did the accent. It would be way
Yeah.
funnier. Talk about
Yep.
details that should have been in the show, okay? You want to make changes? Percy
I
should
mustered
knock
my
the
best
Australian
Australian
accent.
accent. Yep. Yeah, I do like this. He goes, "What did he say?" And Tyson groans. He's still half asleep. He's laying face down on the couch. His feet are so far over the edge that they're basically in the bathroom. Tyson goes, "The happy man said, bowling practice?" And I love the next line. I hoped he was right. But then there was an urgent knock at the suite's interior door.
Okay,
Annabeth
so they
stuck
are
her head
connected.
in. Okay, they are connected then. Annabeth stuck her head in, her blonde hair in a rat's nest. Disemboweling practice?
Yep.
So, unfortunately, he did hear it correctly the first time. It is not bowling practice. Or maybe she misheard it, and
Yeah,
now she's
let's
just getting
cross our
everybody
fingers and hope for
confused.
that. Hope for that scenario.
They get dressed, they go out onto the ship, and now, crazy, there's all sorts of other people. There's a dozen senior citizens going to breakfast. There's a dad taking his kids to the pool for a morning swim. Crew members in crisp white uniforms strolling the deck, tipping their hats to the passengers. And nobody really gave a shit that they were there. Nobody paid attention to Percy and the crew. And it's interesting the way it's written. Percy says, nobody asked who we were. Nobody paid us much attention. But there was something wrong. I feel like you get rid of the but. There was something wrong, is what you should say. There are all of these fucking people here out of nowhere, and they're not addressing you.
Yeah, I will say Rick does a phenomenal job of making like families that Percy passes by just abundantly fucking creepy.
Yeah.
We are on a cruise. We are having fun. And the kids go, yes, we are having a blast. We will swim in the pool. Horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I would jump off the boat. Bye. I'm done.
Yeah.
He's a child of the sea god. We're swimming. Like,
Safest place you could be. Yeah.
yeah,
2
get those
children
fucking
of the sea god.
hippocampi. True. 2 out of 3 of us can't drown. I'm sure that you guys could hold up Annabeth. Like,
Yeah. No, they're surrounded by a bunch of, like, NPCs. It's very eerie. It's very surreal. A crew member comes up, says, "Good morning. We are all enjoying ourselves aboard the Princess Andromeda. Have a nice day." And then he just kind of goes away. And Annabeth whispers, "Percy, this is weird." Yeah, no shit, dog.
what gave you
Again,
that impression?
it's not the interactions that you're having that's weird. It's that you stalked over half of the fucking ship and there was nobody there when you got on board.
Yep. Yep. But now there's people there and monsters because there is a hellhound just hanging out eating the eggs at the buffet while a family patiently waits their turn behind it in line.
Yeah. Yeah, he's macking on it. He is housing those eggs. And it's a little baby hellhound too.
He's a growing boy. I
Yeah,
totally understand, and eggs are so tasty, even if they're
that's true.
probably the shitty powdered ones.
They absolutely are. And we can tell it's a little baby hellhound because it's small compared to most. It's no bigger than a grizzly bear.
Insanity. But
Yeah.
now they're starting to hear more monsters. Annabeth and Percy are starting to hear down the hall a reptilian voice. 6 more joined yesterday. And whether they put it together or not, that's monsters. That's evil creatures walking around on this boat here. So that's cool. And we learn that that reptilian voice is talking to another reptilian voice. And it says, yes, he draws them. Soon we will be strong. And they slither into the cafeteria. He draws them, now giving us a hint that something
Yep.
is on the boat.
Something else is on the boat. Annabeth looks at Percy, says, "We gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here." And Percy notices, "Wait a minute, I'm in the girls' restroom. Whoa, whoa. You think I wanna be in the girls' restroom? Ha 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 ha." Anyways, Annabeth is like, "Percy, shut the fuck up. The ship. We gotta get off the ship.
We are gonna
Tyson,
die.
we are gonna die. Why did we even come here in the first place? We should have stayed with the hippocampi." And Tyson agrees. He once again says, "Smells bad, and dogs eat all the eggs." Annabeth is right. We must leave the restroom and ship.
God, I love
He
this guy.
clarifies. He clarifies. He knew that Percy would be a little
He says,
confused
you guys are
otherwise.
both right. We gotta leave the restroom and the boat.
We can't do one without the other. That's right. And Percy shudders. A chill goes down his spine. He says, "Uh-oh, Annabeth and Tyson are actually agreeing about something. I really gotta listen. Something bad is happening. That's an omen."
Hmm. But then something
And
even worse, even more
yeah,
terrifying is going to happen.
yeah, there's another voice outside the bathroom. It chills Percy worse than any monsters. "Only a matter of time. Don't push me, Agrius." And it's Luke!
Let's fucking
He's
go!
back!
He's
Our
back!
boy!
Man, and if I don't have some Luke glazing to do today, we're almost there. We're getting there.
I know, I know. Another guy growls. He says, "I'm not pushing you." His voice is angrier, deeper than Luke's. "I'm just saying, if this gamble doesn't pay off." Luke says, "It'll pay off. They'll take the bait. Now come. Gotta get to the Admiralty suite and check on the casket." Pin! There's the
There it
pin.
is.
Okay. So my guess as to what initially Percy was sensing, something familiar and terrible, is a little piece of Chronos, maybe? Little bits and pieces of
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Chronos? It's gotta
Absolutely.
be,
That's what's in the
right?
casket. Yes.
Gotta be, yeah.
And now that we have, like, properly set the stakes, and I feel like you can put that together. Annabeth and Percy exchange looks, and poor Tyson's like, "Leave now?" And Annabeth is like, "Mm-mm-mm. We have to find out what Luke is up to. And if possible, we're going to beat him up, bind him in chains, and drag him to Mount Olympus." And presumably Percy agrees, but that is the end of the chapter.
Whew. Yeah.
Yeah. Way to go from 0 to 100 real fucking quick, if you
I
ask me.
know, I know. It really there was a whole lot of very little going on, and then all of it, and then there's all of it. This chapter, and again, we'll talk about it a little bit after the myths, I'm sure, but lots of new twists and things being planted. New
Yeah.
threats, new mysteries. Rick is doing his mystery author thing again.
Dude,
It's great.
it's really good. I wish that this chapter was, like, just the end 5 pages. Not because the first, like, 10 are bad. They're just boring comparatively. As soon as you get to, like, the weirdly enchanted passengers, the monsters brazenly walking the halls of the ship and talking about their actively growing numbers, and then
Yeah.
Luke shows up. I
Uh-huh.
mean, this chapter just really says, "Hey, I know we weren't doing a lot. Here's all the good stuff. Are you
Mhm.
excited now?" And yes, I am so eager to get into the next chapter just to be like, "Let's go confront Luke. Let's do some action. Like, we are
Mhm.
gonna fuck shit up and make bad choices, and I'm here for it."
Yeah, dude, I agree.
Oh, man. But I suppose we can go take a seat over by the pool, look out over the ocean, and we can talk about the Princess Andromeda if you'd like.
Let's do it.
So, I have got a fun one for us today.
I think I just heard you rub your hands together like a fly.
You did. That's my
Were
bad.
were you prepping? You couldn't wait?
I'm excited
You're
for this
about to
one.
dig into this like it's a meal, a scrumptious meal?
Yes, sir. That is exactly what I was doing. Because much like Percy tells us, Perseus is one of few Greek heroes that gets a happy ending. Which means this was a really interesting myth to dive into because Andromeda, spoiler alert, is Perseus's happy ending by most measurements that you might take of his life. So the story of Perseus and Andromeda is a heartfelt love story, kinda. And it was so compelling that its most definitive rendition, the version that for centuries was the version that the average individual would know and tell, was a version that appeared on the stage. So before I get too deep into this, I want to draw attention to the difficulty with presenting this myth because of that fact. We have art depicting the story of Perseus's rescue of Andromeda from as early as the 6th century BC. But the story itself doesn't appear in any of the usual places we might expect to find the first literature of a myth or the first written version. So, where was this myth? The story of Perseus's rescue of Andromeda probably was passed down largely via oral tradition for reasons I'll get to later. But around 450 BC, it found its home in the theater. In fact, that's actually from the point forth that we start to have real information about the myth. Before 450 BC, when it came to the stage, we hardly had people talking or writing about it in ways that we can still find today at all. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we did have art of it. It did exist at least for a minimum of 150 years prior, likely more. But the most definitive version appeared, as I mentioned, in 450 BC. So, of the major playwrights of the time, Sophocles appears to have been the first to write a play entitled Andromeda, as I said, around 450 BC. But the much more definitive version appears to have been written by Euripides, and that didn't come up until about 25 to 50 years later. We don't know exactly. I will be upfront, and I will say that unfortunately, of both of these plays, very few fragments have survived. And specifically online, they're behind a paywall, so fuck you, Loeb Classical Library, you assholes, making my life harder. But I'm not gonna let that stop us from enjoying this tale of love and monsters. But I am going to give us a little bit of an additional history lesson and talk about Euripides, the playwright who wrote the definitive version of this myth. So, to get a greater context of where this comes from, let's dive into his history. Euripides is often referred to in the same breath as two other historic playwrights of the time. I already mentioned one of them, and that's Sophocles, And the other I might have mentioned before in previous episodes, that is a playwright named Aeschylus. These three playwrights are notable today for a few reasons, but they can be summarized in basically 2 points. First, they are the only three playwrights of the time for whom any of their plays have survived in full. Second, they were genuinely very popular, hence the survival of their plays. Euripides himself was actually the youngest of the three playwrights and had the most surviving works. That's what scholars assume to be because, one, he was pumping out plays like nobody's business. He actually managed to write over 90 plays over the course of his career, according to ancient scholars. And in modern times, we still have the names of over 60 of those 90 works. So, we have a reputable source that says, no, this guy was working hard. And because he was younger than the other two playwrights, it's believed that as the theater continued to grow more popular, the other two, as they put out less new work and just got older, were overshadowed by the younger, more hip and new playwright that was Euripides. So, what I find particularly interesting about Euripides is that in comparison to his contemporaries, his reputation was much more of the tragic nature. By this point, we all know the trope that all good Greek theater is tragedy. It ends in horrible, miserable, awful endings every single time. But to give you context of just how Euripides took this and said, oh, you ain't seen shit, Aristotle in the Poetics once described Euripides as the most tragic of poets. You see, Euripides, even more so than like Sophocles or Aeschylus, was known for telling stories with unhappy endings, to the point that modern scholars have stated, and this is a quote, Euripides pushes the limits of what an audience can stand in his representation of human suffering.
Jesus, good lord.
Yes. Now, this isn't to say that he only wrote of misery and unhappy endings. Reminder, this is the same guy who wrote Cyclops, the satyr play that we talked about in episode 1 of this book. It is, however, to draw attention to the difference in the story of Perseus and Andromeda. So Euripides actually did his play, Andromeda, as part of a trilogy. He told the full story of Zeus over 3 plays. Danae, who was Perseus's mother, is the name of the first play and depicts Perseus's early life and rise to fame. Dictys is the name of the second place and the fisherman who rescues Perseus and his mother, and is the tale of story. I'm going to try that again. And is the tale of Perseus's defeat over Medusa. And finally, Andromeda is the story of the hero's ending, the tale of his marriage, and yes, his happily ever after. Unfortunately, Andromeda, as I mentioned earlier, has only survived in fragments, but I promise that telling you all about Euripides was not for nothing. It was for about one quote, though, because I wanted to explain why we have relatively few complete and in-depth versions of this story, and that is because of the popularity of these plays. For example, we will often pull myths from mythographers like Pseudo-Hyginus, and I mentioned that I had all of this for one quote. Consider this quote from Pseudo-Hyginus's work, the Astronomica, written 600 years after the play, discussing the constellation of Andromeda. It reads, "They say she was put among the constellations by the favor of Minerva, on account of the valor of Perseus, who freed her from danger when exposed to the sea monster. Nor did he receive less kindness from her in return for his good deed, for neither her father Cepheus nor her mother Cassiopeia could dissuade her from following Perseus, leaving parents and country. About her, Euripides has written a most excellent play with her name as title." So we can clearly see that 600 years later, the writing of Euripides has still had a long-lasting impact on the way that the myth was enjoyed, perceived, and carried through history. But with all of that, we're still not ready to move into our story because I have one more important detour that I want to get to before we get into the myth itself.
Uh-huh.
So this myth features a sea monster. And often in Greek mythology, we get the opportunity to dive into specific monsters. But this one's cool. At least I found it cool. Because the reason that this particular monster is interesting is it is always described as a Ketos. Not the Ketos, a Ketos. It shares its roots for its name with the name of the goddess Keto, mother of monsters, rather unsurprisingly. And in many modern works, Ketos is just translated to sea monster, which is perhaps underwhelming, but since the word seems to have meant just sea monster, there isn't actually one set way that it looks in visual art. It nearly always has a serpentine or draken-esque body mixed with fish-like features such as fins and tails, but the head is where it starts to get weird. Some depictions actually give it a much more mammalian head, unlike many other sea monsters of the time, and in fact it was very common to give it both the head of a boar or a dog. There are also depictions that give it that more draken-like appearance with reptilian features for the head, but the fact that it has this at all mammalian appearance, I thought was particularly cool, and it's very different from other monsters that are of similar natures, specifically sea monsters. And this monster in particular, as I mentioned, is not just the Ketos, it's a Ketos. And so it appears in 2 to 3 other myths that we can find really easily. I say 2 to 3 because the one that's mentioned in the Iliad is the same one that Heracles fights, but we're getting to that. So I did just mention, it is mentioned in the Iliad. There, they're discussing a fortress where a king would flee from a Ketos. It's translated as earth piled on both sides, a high imposing breastwork men of Troy and Pallas Athena flung up for the man where he could race and escape that sea monster wherever it charged him from shore to plain. And here you'll notice that the original ancient Greek is just translated to sea monster, but if you go look at the ancient Greek, it is the word Ketos. And the reason I said 2 to 3 myths, as I mentioned, is because this Ketos that is discussed in the Iliad is in fact the same one that Heracles kills to save Hesione. Consider this quote from Pseudo-Apollodorus, where he sums up literally the entire myth. All the context you need to know is that Trojan king, his name is Laomedon, and he pissed off Apollo and Poseidon by not paying them for building a fortress for him. It reads, "Therefore Apollo sent a pestilence, and Poseidon a sea monster, which, carried up by a flood, snatched away the people of the plain. But oracles foretold deliverance from these calamities if Laomedon would expose his daughter, Hesione, to be devoured by the sea monster. He exposed her by fastening her to the rocks near the sea. Seeing her exposed, Hercules promised to save her on condition of receiving from Laomedon the mares which Zeus had given in compensation for the rape of Ganymede. On Laomedon saying that he would give them, Hercules killed the monster and saved Hesione."
Wait a minute. Hold on. Isn't that
Uh-huh.
basically that's like the same thing?
And that's
Isn't
basically the same thing. So now we
Yeah.
can talk about the myth itself that we came here for, the myth of Princess Andromeda. And I wanted to specifically bring up the Heracles myth because remember how I mentioned that this myth doesn't have a definitive written version until 450 BC? And up
Mhm.
until that point, we have very little information. Well, it's believed that these two myths probably shared the same origin and were only passed down via oral tradition. And as they were passed down and passed down and passed down, they were inevitably assigned to different heroes. In one version, Hercules saves Hesione, and in the other, Perseus saves Andromeda. In one version, Perseus receives Andromeda's hand in marriage, and in the other, Hercules wants some horses that he doesn't end up getting because he's Hercules, and nothing goes right for that poor guy.
Uh-huh. So wait, Connor, hold on. You
Yes,
mentioned Akitas, and that's fascinating because in that really famous movie, they don't say release Akitas, they say release the Kraken. So what's up with that, huh?
that actually, I'm so glad you asked, comes from Norse mythology. So sea monsters in more northern traditions, northern European traditions, are often depicted as cephalopods, because cephalopods to them were the most horrifying thing that a monster could be.
Mhm.
But I guess they weren't the most horrifying thing that a sea monster could be in Greece. So, as modern humans, we're like, yeah, actually, cephalopods are way more terrifying. The idea that the Kraken is a big octopus or squid-like creature has become far more common, and that is genuinely why the directors chose and film writers chose to put a giant tentacle monster in that movie instead of Iquitos.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a genuine reason behind that. I wasn't sure that I was
Yeah.
gonna find a place to weave that in, so thanks for your question.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. It's the alley oops that I'm trying to assist you with.
I appreciate it. But now we can finally discuss Princess Andromeda. And so, as we often do, let's begin by learning a little bit about our characters. I'll start with Perseus just to get him out of the way. We've discussed the history of Perseus before on this show. I'll keep it short. King Acrisios locked his daughter, Princess Danae, in a bronze chamber underground because an oracle told him that he would be killed by her son. Zeus takes that as a personal challenge and impregnates her in the form of a golden rain, or as it's often translated, a golden shower. Yes, seriously.
Yes, it's the piss thing. Yep. We've
Yep,
we've done this. We've done this.
we've done this. Perseus is born, so Acrisius does the rational thing and puts Danae and Perseus in a box and throws them out to sea, hoping they'll die. They don't die. They're rescued. Perseus goes on. He kills Medusa, and he passes Ethiopia on his way home. If you want the full story of him killing Medusa, check out chapter 11 from book 1. What we're here for, Andromeda. Andromeda was a princess of Ethiopia. She was born to King Cepheus and his wife Cassiopeia, and she was doomed to a horrible fate by the hubris of her parents. I'll be pulling excerpts from various sources today, but let's start with a quote from Pseudo Apollodorus. Arriving in Ethiopia, which Cepheus ruled, Perseus came upon his daughter, Andromeda, laid out as a meal for Iquitos. It seems that the king's wife, Cassiopeia, had challenged the Nereids in beauty, boasting that she outdid them all. As a result, the Nereids were in a rage, and Poseidon, in sympathetic anger, sent a flood tide upon the land, and Iquitos as well. And I feel as though I should point out that in the translation I'm using, it even puts sea monster in parentheses next to Iquitos, just to really drive home. Iquitos pretty much just means sea monster. It appears that in most versions, Cassiopeia bragged that she was more beautiful than the Nereids. However, there are some versions, such as this one from Pseudo-Hyginus, where she brags on behalf of her daughter. It reads, Cassiopeia claimed that her daughter Andromeda's beauty excelled the Nereids. Because of this, Neptunus demanded that Andromeda, Cepheus' daughter, be offered to a sea monster. Yeah.
Imagine being Andromeda, hearing that, being like, "Oh, that's so sweet, mom." Wait, okay, all right, you're getting a little. I need you to shut the fuck up now. All right,
Yep.
you see that? You see the waves?
Oh, hold
You're
on.
getting a little
What?
high.
Oh no. No, truly, it's such a tragedy from Andromeda's perspective because none of it is her fault.
Yeah,
It
that's
is all
horrible.
thrust upon her. And that's in all versions. Like, there is no version where Andromeda's like, me, I'm beautiful. It's always Cassiopeia who's like, I am beautiful, or my daughter is beautiful, and more specifically beautiful than Poseidon's concubines.
That's great.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it's all of a sudden like, why would you say that?
Why would you do that, Bob? Yeah. Oh,
So
that is
Poseidon,
tragic.
of course, having been insulted, or rather, his Nereids having been insulted, but they're members of his court, so he does the only rational thing he can think of. So he sends a sea monster to ravage the coast as punishment.
Yeah.
Now, in the version I just read from Pseudo-Hyginus's Fabulae, it is Poseidon who demands the sacrifice of Andromeda. But in most other versions, such as those from Pseudo-Apollodorus and Ovid, it is actually Cepheus who, as all good kings and fathers in myths do, seeks out an oracle, and, as Pseudo-Apollodorus tells us, the oracle of Ammon prophesied an end to the trouble if Cassiopeia's daughter, Andromeda, were served up to the monster as a meal. So Cepheus, pushed to it by the Ethiopians, tied his daughter out on a rock. And just to toss it in for fun, Ammon is believed to be an oasis that existed in the Saharan desert on the west side of Egypt. So Ethiopia, actually relatively close to Egypt, both being on the African continent. And so he sent off his guys to go check out what the oracle would say, and they're like, yep, sorry, man. Your daughter's got to get eaten by a sea monster.
It's like, damn, can't argue with that. Sorry, honey.
If you insist. So
Mhm.
now we have our damsel in distress. There is no better time for a heroic entrance as Perseus, still with the flying sandals he borrowed from Hermes, flies into the scene. And again, there are differences here of version, but they're close enough for me to pretty much proceed from here on out. Because the manner of how varies slightly, at this point, Perseus always takes this opportunity as he flies in to negotiate with King Cepheus because he can't just like kill the monster and save the girl. So
Uh-huh.
he's got to stop, and we have this one from Ovid. And I've got some quotes in here. Jack, would you like to be Perseus or would you like to be the guy that Perseus is going to kill?
You know what? I feel like you always make me, like, kind of the hero. I'll be the sniveling asshole that's gonna die. I'll do
Okay.
that.
So Ovid tells us, and Perseus bound his wings upon his feet. On each foot he bound them. His sword he girt, and sped wing-footed through the liquid air. Innumerous kingdoms far behind were left, till peoples Ethiopic, and the lands of Cepheus were beneath his lofty view. There Ammon, the unjust, had made decree, Andromeda, the innocent, should grieve her mother's tongue. They bound her fast to the rock. When Perseus her beheld, as marble he would deem her, but the breeze moved in her hair, and from her streaming eyes the warm tears fell. Her beauty so amazed his heart, unconscious captive of her charms, that almost his swift wings forgot to wave. Alighted on the ground, he thus began, O fairest, whom these chains become not so, but worthy are for links that lovers bind. Make known to me your country's name, and yours, and wherefore bound in chains. A moment then, as overcome with shame, she made no sound. Were she not fettered, she would surely hide her blushing head. But what she could perform, that she did do. She filled her eyes with tears. So pleaded he that last refusal seem implied confession of a crime. She told her name, her country's name, and how her charms had been her mother's pride. But as she spoke, the mighty ocean roared. Over the waves a monster fast approached, its head held high abreast the wide expanse. The virgin shrieked. No aid her wretched father gave, nor aid her still more wretched mother, but they wept, and mingled lamentations with their tears, clinging distracted to her fettered form. And thus the stranger spoke to them. Time waits for tears, but flies the moment of our need. Were I, who am the son of regal Jove, and her whom he embraced in showers of gold, leaving her pregnant in her brazen cell, I, Perseus, who destroyed the Gorgon wreathed with snake hair, I, who dared on waving wings to cleave ethereal air, were I to ask the maid in marriage, I should be preferred above all others as your son-in-law, not satisfied with deeds achieved. I strive to add such merit as the gods permit. Now, therefore, should my valor save her life, be it conditioned that I win her love. To this, her parents gave a glad assent, for who could hesitate? And they entreat and promise him the kingdom as a dower. And now that
Wow.
business is out of the way, Perseus can
That's
actually
hold
go on to
on.
killing the monster.
Let's break this down in plain English, alright?
Yup.
Perseus just got done being a hero. He's flying through the air like Superman. He sees this beautiful woman with her flowing locks in the wind, chained to this big ass rock on a cliff face. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
"What the fuck?" Goes down. He's like, "Who are you?" She said, "This is who I am. I did nothing wrong. My parents suck." He's like, "Oh, fuck." And then turns around and sees fucking the Jaws theme is playing. The fucking surface tension on the water is starting to break as this massive beast is starting to rise. She's like, "Holy shit! You guys are gonna do something about this, right?" And then they don't.
Yup.
They're crying, but they don't. And he's like, "All right, listen, I'm sick. I'm really cool. Like sick in a cool way. I'm dope. I've done a lot. I'm Zeus's son. He peed on my mom in a cell, and now I killed Medusa, and I've got her head. I'm gonna marry your daughter, and you're gonna give me your kingdom if I save her." That's what just happened.
Yes, and I love the line that Ovid gives in response. To this, her parents gave a glad assent, for who could hesitate?
Yeah.
Because what that says is they stopped crying. They're like, oh, phew, he's gonna save our daughter. Our son in law is gonna be the son of Zeus. This day can't get
Yeah.
any better.
Yeah, he is literally Perseus Machina. That's crazy. He flew out of
Yeah!
fucking nowhere, said, "I am gonna fix everything." They said, "Do it. Fucking you could do it, man. You got it."
Whatever you want, kiddo. Please kill that monster. And as I said, now that the business is out of the way, Perseus can actually do the killing. He's like, hold on. I gotta win your daughter's hand in marriage first, but now that I've claimed ownership of a person.
Uh-huh.
So again, from Ovid. As the swift bird of Jove when he beholds a basking serpent in an open field, exposing to the sun its mottled back and seizes on its tail, lest it shall turn. To strike with venom fang, he fixes fast his grasping talons in the scaly neck. So did the winged youth, in rapid flight through yielding elements, press down on the great monster's back, and thrust his sword sheer to the hilt in its right shoulder. Loud, its frightful torture sounded over the waves. So fought the hero son of Inachus. Wild with the grievous wound, the monster rears high in the air, or plunges in the waves, or wheels around as turns the frightened boar, shunning the hounds around him in full cry. The hero on his active wings avoids the monster's jaws, and with his crooked sword, tortures its back wherever he may pierce its mail of hollow shell, or strikes betwixt the ribs on each side, or wounds its lashing tail, long tapered as a fish. The monster spouts forth streams, incarnadined with blood, that sprays upon the hero's wings, who, drenched and heavy with the spume, no longer dares to trust existence to his dripping wings. But he discerns a rock, which rises clear above the water when the sea is calm, but now is covered by the lashing waves. On this he rests, and as his left hand holds firm on the upmost ledge, he thrusts his sword times more than 3, unswerving in his aim, sheer through the monster's entrails. Shouts of praise resound along the shores, and even the gods may hear his glory in their high abodes. Her parents, Cepheus and Cassiopeia, most joyfully salute their son-in-law, declaring him the savior of their house. And now, her chains struck off, the lovely cause and guerdon of his toil, walks on the shore.
Wow. That was actually fucking cool. That was a good fight scene, Ovid.
Ovid writes great action, and it's a shame because I'm going to skip some later. But Andromeda is now free, and we get to have a feast. But you
Oh,
see,
hooray.
King Cepheus cannot do a single fucking thing right, because now he has promised his daughter's hand in marriage to 2 different people. And
Ooh.
in his defense, the second of those people was his royal flying hotness, Perseus, son of Zeus, who also just saved your kingdom.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he was also second and not first. And Andromeda
Uh-huh.
was already promised to Cepheus's brother, Phineus, who is her uncle.
Okay. Keeping it in
Gotta
the
keep it in the
family.
family.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So, as they're having this celebratory feast to celebrate both the defeat of the sea monster and the betrothal of Andromeda to Perseus, the rash ringleader, Phineus, arrives. And Ovid writes, Phineus shook his spear, brass-tipped of ash, and shouted.
Ha! 'Tis I come avenger of my ravished bride.
And so King Cepheus responds, If truth were known, not Perseus ravished her from you, but either 'twas the awful god that rules the Nereids, or Ammon crowned with crescent's horns, or that monstrosity of ocean's vast abyss which came to glut his famine on the issue of my loins. Nor was your suit abandoned till the time when she must perish and be lost to you. So cruel are you, seeking my daughter's death, rejoicing lightly in our deep despair. And was it not enough for you to stand supinely by while she was bound in chains and offer no assistance, though you were her lover and betrothed? And will you grieve that she was rescued from a dreadful fate, and spoil her champion of his just rewards, reward that now may seem magnificent, but not denied to you if you had won and saved when she was fettered to the rock? Let him whose strength to my declining years restored my child receive the merit his words and deeds, and know his suit was not preferred to yours, but granted to prevent her certain death. And so the story continues. Not deigning to reply, against them Phineus stood, and glancing back from him to Perseus with alternate looks, as doubtful which should feel his first attack made a brief delay. Then, vain at Perseus, hurled his spear with all the force that rage inspired, but missing him, it quivered in a couch. So in
That
case you missed it,
sucks.
Phineas just tried to kill Perseus, and
Yeah.
that shit does not fly with the son of Zeus.
No, no, it doesn't.
So,
Perseus did nothing wrong. Now he's gonna get
correct.
killed for it?
Yes, or at least Phineas is gonna try.
Gonna try
And
and fail.
this myth has been quite long. So I'm gonna speed through what I must promise you are the next few hundred lines. Like 500 lines. And all you need to know is that all of Phineas's retinue are killed off one by one. Either by Perseus's violent rage as he tries to get to Phineas to kill him, or in multiple occurrences, by Phineas's genuine buffoonery as he tries to fight back against Perseus and either gets his men killed or straight up accidentally kills them on multiple occasions by throwing his spear and missing.
He's got friendly fire on. That's crazy.
Yes! And he kills like 5 guys that way. Now, granted, Perseus
Wow.
kills many more, but truly it's like, and then he killed another one by swinging his spear wildly. And it's like, oh my god, dude, you gotta pay attention. You cannot just
Yeah.
try and kill people willy-nilly and fail so fucking gloriously.
He is fighting John Wick right now, though.
Yes.
So, like, does it really matter? If he didn't kill him, Perseus was gonna.
And I need to be so specific. He's been fighting John Wick with a hand tied behind his back, fighting with a single handgun. Because up until this point, Perseus has not had enough of it and has been genuinely just doing the killing himself. But eventually, he's like, fuck it, I'm tired of this shit and you guys are still here. And he pulls out Medusa's head and starts turning Phineas's men to stone in droves.
He sucks.
Once he's built up a courtyard of statues, Perseus finally catches up to Phineas. There are no men left to defend him, and Ovid writes, "At last, repentant Phineas dreads the war, unjust, for in a helpless fright he sees the statues standing in strange attitudes, and recognizing his adherents, calls on each by name to rescue from that death. Still unbelieving, he begins to touch the bodies nearest himself, and all are hard stone. Having turned his eyes away, he stretched his hands and arms obliquely back to Perseus and confessed his wicked deeds, and thus imploring spoke.
Remove, I pray, O Perseus, thou invincible. The glaze, the glaze. Notice the glaze.
Mm-hmm.
Remove from me that dreadful Gorgon. Take away the stone-creating countenance of thy unspeakable Medusa. For we warred not out of hatred, nor to gain a throne, but clashed our weapons for a woman's sake. Thy merit proved thy valid claim, and time gave argument for mine. It grieves me not to yield, O bravest. Only give me life, and all the rest can be thine.
Such words implored the craven, never daring to address his eyes to whom he spoke. And thus returned the valiant Perseus. I will grant to you, O timid-hearted Phineas, as behooves your conduct, and it should appear a gift monogamous to one who fears to move. Take courage, for no steel shall violate your carcass. And moreover, you shall be a monument that ages may record your unforgotten name. You shall be seen thus always in the palace where resides my father-in-law, that my surrendered spouse may soften her great grief when she but sees the darling image of her first betrothed.
Holy shit.
He spoke, and moved Medusa to that side, where Phineas had turned his trembling face, and as he struggled to avert his gaze, his neck grew stiff, the moisture of his eyes was hardened to stone, and since that day, his timid face and coward eyes and hands forever shall be guilty, as in life.
Fuck. Ovid was kind of fucking cooking. Hold on. His writing is fire.
And from there, Perseus and Andromeda are wed and go on to live happily ever after. Seriously.
That's beautiful, man.
Perseus has zero chill. He gives a fucking crazy ass speech where he says, and this is why you deserve to be turned to stone. Fuck you. Let you forever be a monument to your cowardice. Fuck, dude.
I know. Yeah, he really
Ugh.
said, dude, I wasn't even supposed to be here.
Yeah.
But you are so bitch made. Look at this. Look at
You
how
are
bitch made you
so
are.
in.
And you're going to be seen as that for the rest of not only your days, but for centuries. You're stoned now. I
Yeah.
do love and you mentioned Perseus just got tired of it and pulled out the insta win. Uh,
Yes.
that is truly hilarious. I I love this guy. He's no blameless Bellerophon, but he's up there.
He's got some swagger to him, that's for
He
sure.
does. He's got some sauce.
Ah, and Jack, I can see you poking around in my notes because I had to share them with you so that you could read your lines. But there is more. Not a lot more, but there's a little bit more. And
Uh-huh.
the last detail that I want to add to this story is a short one. You'll notice, as we just talked about, Perseus clearly has the head of Medusa during this entire encounter and just chooses not to use it. And that's true in all versions of the story, by the way, because this always happens when Perseus is on his way back from slaying Medusa, and he was specifically tasked with bringing back her head. Now, you may have heard versions of this tale wherein Perseus simply turns the Ketos to stone, just like he did with Phineas. And what happened that got people to tell this version of the story, and this is true, is that over time, the story was shifted by a satirist. Now, just to give you context, in the 5th century, in Nonnus's Dionysica, that one's going to be the death of me. In the 5th century, in Nonnus's Dionysica, it reads, Perseus turned into stone, a whole huge monster of the deep, and on the wing loosed the chains of Andromeda and offered the stone sea monster as a worthy bridal gift. Now, the 5th century AD is very important there, because the first written version, where Perseus uses the head of Medusa to turn the monster to stone rather than killing it with his sword, was actually penned by a satirist in the 2nd century, a man named Lucian of Samosata, who is best known for openly ridiculing religious practices.
He
It
was
took someone
iconoclast.
Yes, it took someone openly pointing out how stupid it is for Perseus not to have just used the head of Medusa for that to slowly become the popular version of the story.
Uh-huh.
I I made the comparison that this is like if in 100 years they remake the Avengers Infinity Saga and they're like, shit, Ant-Man really should kill Thanos by crawling in his asshole.
That's that's actually a phenomenal comparison, Connor. That's really good.
That's
It's
exactly what this is.
crawl up into his butt and grow big again, just blow him up.
Yes,
Yeah, they coulda just done that.
it was literally this guy Lucian of Samosata being like, he had the head. This
Yeah.
fucker could have just turned it to stone. Why did he go through all the effort? They're like, shit, he's making a good point.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that is the story of Perseus and Andromeda. And at least to me, when you finally turn around and look at it from the perspective of it being the name of what is effectively Luke's warship, and knowing full well that he uses Andromeda's chained and screaming form as the figurehead of that ship, I think, at least for me, it foreshadows a few things, or at least it draws attention to them. Because Luke, I think, in this instance, sees himself as Perseus, and the ship is his very own Princess Andromeda. He is coming to the rescue of the helpless demigods chained to their fates. He is the one on swift wings of Hermes. Notice the wings. I genuinely think that's not unintentional. And is the one, he sees himself as a liberator. He sees himself as the one who swoops in and does the right thing. And what's fascinating to me is there is literally a Perseus that he is taunting to come aboard. Luke, in my opinion, and I think Rick did this intentionally, is the true Andromeda aboard the Princess Andromeda. He is chained to the rocks by his father via prophecy bullshit. And he is there to appease the coming monster like bait so that they can slay it. Luke specifically, by the end of the story, will give up his body and his life to defeat the monster, just like Andromeda is put out for Perseus to save, but for the Ketos to eat. And yet again, our Perseus, Percy Jackson, will actually be the one to break Luke's bonds and free him from Kronos, so that he is not,
Mm.
in fact, killed by the monster, but instead has his final moments with Perseus in a quote unquote happy ending. I just think it's too intentional that it could be anything else.
You're a pretty smart guy, Connor. You know that?
Thank you. I try. I make a whole podcast, so I've got a pretty high IQ.
I think it's because Percy and Luke are gonna get married.
Oh, you know what? I didn't read
Mhm.
that one. I bet it's in the Demigod files, so I'll go
Yeah, I was
refresh my memory.
gonna say brush up on that, alright?
I just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, all
Am I
joking aside,
crazy here?
no, that fits very, very well. I think there's also we've talked about Luke having a fundamental misunderstanding of just things. He takes
Yeah.
away the wrong message. Whether or not he views himself as a Perseus or not, I mean, it sounds like they are, and again, I don't remember, but was passing comment in this chapter to they're drawing monsters, and that could be because Kronos is there drawing them, but also Andromeda is meant to draw monsters. That is what
Mhm.
Luke is trying to do. So that just on its face is a beacon that's drawing the monsters there, right? So
Yeah.
that as a more surface level, it's a tool. And so he is the king and queen in this instance, literally tying the Andromeda figurehead as a beacon to draw these monsters because it will benefit them, right? Now, of course,
Yeah.
in the story, they're sad. Our daughter's gonna die, but it's their fault. It does benefit them. If they were good
Mhm.
parents, they'd be like, "No, we'll find another way," but they don't.
That's
So
another great take. I love that interpretation too.
there's a lot of really cool stuff to play with here. I'm sure if I had more time to think on it, and I definitely will, I could come up with more, but I really, really like the analysis that you concocted. I think all of that is very valid, viable, and fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a few moments in these books where I'm like, that was intentional as hell. Like,
Mhm,
obviously, Rick is drawing upon the mythology and the tropes and kind of referencing them in many ways throughout literally all of this. This is his own modern take on a lot of these Greek myths, and I think that's really cool. But there are small details where it's suddenly like, the fact that you used Princess Andromeda here, of all places, is fascinating and so intentional. It just
mhm,
works on so many levels, and I think speaks incredibly deeply, at least again, in my very much glazing Luke opinion, to Luke's mental state in this moment.
mhm,
Because there's no way that this cruise ship started out with Princess Andromeda screaming in horror on the front of it.
mhm.
Luke is the commander of this army. I doubt Kronos was particularly fucking concerned with like, "Oh, it's gonna be so cool. You have to put Princess Andromeda on the front. She's like my favorite."
I mean,
Like,
there is a non-zero chance that happened, but I also agree, probably not.
yes, there is a non-zero chance, but yeah, exactly. It feels less
Mm,
likely than Luke being the one to make that choice.
mhm,
And no matter which way you look at it, that is a crazy fucking choice for him to make. Because, like, even the idea that he has the giant warship, he
uh-huh,
is the sea monster.
yeah,
But I just don't think he sees himself that way. And it's so fascinating. And that's why I'm
mhm.
like, the back 5 pages of this chapter
There's a
is
lot.
so cool. And it's
Mhm.
got a
I mean,
lot going for it.
he could also alright, because now I've got time to marinate. He Andromeda is just immortal, correct? At least as far
Correct.
as we're
Yep.
aware, she is a
She's just a
mortal
mortal
woman.
princess.
She is terrified. This could also just be an instance of Luke, again, building off of some of those eugenicsy, survival of the fittest, golden age, that rhetoric from the end of the first book,
Mhm.
is this is a mortal that is bound for our purpose. That is the point
Ooh.
of Andromeda. It is a means to an end. It is beneath us, and it is here to draw out what we want, nothing more, nothing less. It is a tool.
Yeah, he's using her just like her parents did.
Mhm,
Yeah, man. That works really well too. God, again, like, I know I've belabored this point. It works on so many levels, and I love that Rick chose to do that. I
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
And
the
yeah,
idea of a warship out of a cruise ship is a little silly, to be honest with you, but whatever, it's
mhm.
fun for cool set pieces. But that little detail of just the way it's named provokes so much thought.
Yeah, I mean, a warship out of a cruise ship, a little weird. Honestly, once I guess relearned again, because this is all stuff I knew once upon a time. But once I relearned that the point is they're trying to pick up as many things, as many allies, as many monsters as possible. I think it's actually really fucking cool that they're like, we're gonna have so many fucking people here. We need a cruise ship. We need a
Yeah.
city. We need a city that floats. Like
Mhm.
that makes it so much more daunting in
Yeah.
retrospect.
Oh, yeah, because it's not just monsters on there, like, it's other demigods that have pledged
Yes.
their allegiance to Luke. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Ah,
So I think honestly, phenomenal job dovetailing the myths back into our kind of chapter recap.
thank you.
Um, adding the myth definitely helped contextualize some of the stuff at the end. Even without that, on from my perspective, though, I think again those last 5 pages, they threw in some more stakes. They again started planting some seeds for this book and also I think the rest of the series, which is really cool because up until this point, for the most part, it felt like we were kind of hitting cruise control with there's no real change to status quo except Camp Half-Blood is under siege, and that's big, but in terms of the stakes at hand, there
Yeah, the
wasn't
greater
any wrench.
conflict.
Correct. Yes,
Like,
exactly.
Camp Half-Blood is one place that is very important, but it's just one place, and it's only where demigods are going to be affected. Like,
Yes.
the Princess Andromeda as a warship, that endangers mortals. That
Mhm.
endangers anywhere that that ship decides to dock and loose its monstrous cargo.
Yeah, and or it's like, again, like, what exactly are they trying to do? We could assume, we can speculate. That's all I've been able to do is assume and speculate, but I don't know for certain. There could be another
Mhm.
curveball thrown, but we're starting to get that sprinkling of details and clues to where speculation can properly happen instead of just, like, total fucking guesswork.
Yeah. And honestly, the story is better for it. I think it's really cool. Guys, let us know. Am I crazy? Am I stretching here? Or do you have your own cool theories as to what the Princess Andromeda represents? Let us know in the comments, leave a review. You know all the usual stuff, but we would genuinely love to hear from you because I thought this was just such a cool detail. And I just want to sit and discuss it all day. So I will be in the comments. I'll be responding to whatever you guys have to say. But let us know. Let us know your thoughts.
And as much as I would love to continue discussing, Connor, I think we've been recording for a bit. I don't know that I have any more substance to add. Do you have any final thoughts?
I think that we're about done here, and frankly, I'm just excited to move into next chapter where we get a whole lot more fucking Luke, baby!
Yeah.
So I think with that, I'm gonna put my bookmark in, close my book, and I think we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support our content, please be sure to leave a review, share with your friends, and follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, this has been Notes from the Oracle.
Those are the little pamphlets that play.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mhm.
I was vibing. Oh,
Uh-huh.
man. I love that you caught me rubbing my hands like a fly.
Dude, I
did
heard
not
it.
realize you could
You were
hear that on the mic.
scheming. You were scheming. You were ready to dig in.
I'm glad that you could see just how fucking excited I was for this myth. I didn't think I would have so much to say. I thought I'd be like, "Oh, it's Princess Andromeda. Like, here's the story of Perseus." But then I got to go on like the theater tangent. And then
Mhm.
as the more I read about it, the more I was like, "Dude, holy shit. I have so much to say about like this being the choice that Luke makes for his boat." I had fun with it. I was very greedily awaiting telling this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Euripides, and I'd heard of Euripides before, but I seem to remember, and this was, shit, several years ago now, there's kind of a modern debate, as there is with many of these very old, ancient, playwrights, authors, what they were trying to achieve in terms of, like, socially, politically with their writings. And Euripides, because he wrote such depressing, yeah, but, like, very passionate. He brings hate and love to extremes. Like, I
Yes.
remember that. That's the big thing. He pushes them to their brink and their extremes. But there's some debate over if he was, the term I used before, iconoclastic. Like, really pushing the envelope, not only in terms of emotion, but also in terms of what is societally okay, conventionally understood.
Yeah.
Um and so I find it funny that the modern retelling then of, the he Perseus pulls out the Medusa's head and fucking turns the sea monster
Turns
to
it all to
stone.
stone. Yep.
Turns it all to stone. That came from a lampooning of this guy who did inherently critical works about society. Again, potentially, if people view him that way. Some people might not. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are like, "Nope, he was just a very classical and wasn't trying to make any statements when it comes to, like, pushing back against fundamental and traditional understanding of things, blah, 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 blah." But I don't know. I feel like at the very least, even in the original telling, the concept of, "Yeah, dude, your parents and elders were fucking stupid.
E
They
So
harmed you and you did nothing wrong." That seems incredibly iconoclastic.
yes. And what's actually really poignant, and I didn't find a good place to work it into the episode because it's a fable. It's not fact about Euripides' life. It might
Mhm.
be, but we as modern people are like, this next bit, it's just a story that people told. So those three playwrights, Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides, all existed within some context around a war. So
Mm,
Sophocles served in the war. Aeschylus was too old to serve, but voted and was displaced by the war. Euripides was born the day the war ended.
mm,
And so, genuinely, and that's the fable part, but the genuine part is that these guys existed at the turn of society and at a rise of art, a sort of theatrical renaissance. This is when, like, as I mentioned, the satyr plays were becoming big, and they were becoming like the festival of Dionysus was making its way from outskirts and rural regions into modern areas and like cities, not modern
mhm,
areas, urban areas. And so Euripides existed at this time as people were growing out of a time of war into a peacetime. He was literally dealing with the sins of his forefathers and
mhm,
presenting those things in art. He was witnessing, hey, we just did this big war and it had all of these awful impacts on our society. And as they grew into more and more theater, I mentioned Aristotle pointed out, this guy was known for his horrible, awful endings. And as you said, like he told the most miserable, depressing stories. I fully believe that you are correct. And it was absolutely a reaction to the time he was living in. Society was becoming increasingly more modern compared to the world they'd been in before, and it wasn't a good thing. It was fucking
mhm,
people over. It was leaving people homeless and tired and seeing wealth inequality, rise to unknown levels up until that point. Sounds a little familiar,
mhm, yeah,
but it it's just at least to me, it's really interesting to think about it when you think about it from this fabled perspective of like, he was born the day the war ended. Whether or not that's true, he really was born at like this turn in history. And the
mhm,
fact that he chose to tell these stories, I think it's absolutely worth pointing out that in this version, Andromeda is chained up by her parents because of her parents. Whereas in the version from Heracles, which was not changed at all or put into the common consciousness by Euripides, that it's just like, yeah, the gods didn't get paid, so they got mad, and then Heracles showed up and saved people. It's
right.
whatever.
I
Like,
remembered what I was gonna say. I remembered what I was gonna say.
hit me.
This story being potentially, I would say, and it sounds like you agree, iconoclastic in foundation, right?
Mhm.
And it also tying back to Luke, who is actively 100% pushing against normative behavior, established tradition. Um,
Yeah,
that's another point in favor of the very fascinating parallels as well.
that's a
Um,
very good point.
yes,
God, it makes
that
me
was
wonder
what I
then
was initially going to.
if he sees himself as the Euripides, putting forth his Andromeda.
Maybe,
But, oh,
maybe
man.
I don't know.
Dude,
I
I
love
told you
that
I
it's
could keep
all.
noodling on this so long.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's all very like possible. I mean, some, whether Rick was thinking about this stuff or not, notwithstanding, he might have just been like, "Nah, this is cool. I like, gotta have a lady at the front of the ship, and it's gotta, Andromeda. She was tied to something, and that looks badass." There's a real chance that that's what happened, but if let's say that it still is the case, it's still really cool that
Yeah.
he managed to stumble into all of these really fascinating themes and parallels.
Yeah, I think the
I don't think that's the
most
case. I don't think he did it just because it was fucking cool. I'm sure
no,
that
no,
was a
no.
part of it, but
I would say I think the most likely scenario, genuinely, is that Rick looked at it and went, "There are parallels here. I myself can think about them, but don't need to explore them. Put it on the figurehead of the ship and move on because there is something interesting there, and I'll let
mhm.
people unpack that." Like, I think that's
Yes.
probably what it was, is he went, "No, no, no. There's a link here. I don't have to figure it out or play with it, but it's
Mhm.
there."
Yeah. It's like how, well, he's a mystery writer. It's the most fascinating answer that you can have is the one that remains unanswered, right? It's
Mhm.
let people theory craft and create their own conclusions and have that itch that remains unscratched because they will probably be able to make a more satisfying answer in their heads than you could if you just said, "This is what it means. This is it."
Yeah. It it's really cool. It's moments like this that remind me why I love his writing so much. Like,
Mhm.
he just does little things that fucking they grab me. They grab
Yeah.
me, they pull me in.
Yep. Yeah,
But,
him and Ovid, they were cooking when it came to this
oh,
Greek stuff.
this was a good Ovid piece.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh,
If I
alright,
didn't
man.
know my throat was gonna be tired, I woulda read those other 500 lines.
I would have kindly asked you to not, because I would have had to sit there and listen to them.
There's a reason I didn't.